Thank you for choosing jcCloth. This tool utilizes a proxy workflow. A proxy version of your geometry will be created at the beginning of the process and will be called your sim cage. The sim cage will be simulated and connected to your final geometry, which we will refer to as your render mesh. There are several benefits to this. Your render mesh can have more detailed geometry, your simulation time will be faster, and the simulation process will be more intuitive. There are a few key things to keep in mind while making your geometry. nCloth works best with quads. A denser mesh means slower simulation but more detailed wrinkles. And once you've created an nCloth rig, you cannot add or delete edges to your sim cage mesh. In this example, we're going to begin by prepping our models for simulation. To demonstrate this tool, we have a basic character with a few basic clothing. All the geometries have a clean history and frozen transforms. We're going to focus on this t-shirt. We have extrusions for the inside and outside of the shirt. This is the t-shirt I want to have as my final product. Let's duplicate this shirt and make the sim cage. First thing we want to do is delete the extruded faces. We want our sim cage to be single-sided. This will eliminate about half of the polygons and have less interpenetrations to worry about during simulation. Next, we can delete any unnecessary edges. The more evenly spaced the quads, the better. I don't recommend adding edge loops to your sim cage that aren't in your render mesh, because your render mesh will bend wherever your sim cage bends. If your sim cage has extra loops that do not correlate with your render mesh, then your render mesh may not act the way you expect. Now that we have the proxy mesh complete, let's delete history on this mesh and freeze its transforms. Let's move on to the Setup tab. Each tab has a Tips and Tricks pull-down menu. In this menu, you can get some additional information about how to use this section of the tool. The first thing we have to do is name our rig. I'm going to name this shirt. Next, it asks about our nucleus. nCloth uses nucleus to determine things such as gravity, wind, pressure, etc. If you don't have any in the scene, type in a name and make sure that new nucleus is highlighted. Next, we have to decide on a shader for the sim cage. This only serves for organizational purposes. You can have the same shader as your render mesh simply by clicking on the checkmark. Or you can create a new Lambert with a specific color. If you're creating a new material, name it and make sure you have new material highlighted in the list. If we click Create Sim Cage, we got an error message because I did not select anything. These error messages will pop up whenever you do something wrong and will inform you on what to do. So I'm going to select my sim cage followed by my render mesh and now click Create nCloth Rig. If we look at our outliner now, we can see that our nucleus is under the nuke group. There's also all of these other nodes that have been created and organized in the outliner. As you can see, a control was created under the shirt. This is your sim cage master control. If you select it, you have a few attributes in addition to the transforms. You can switch the visibility between the render mesh and sim cage. Both our sim cage and render mesh are moving accordingly, but they're not interacting with the body. We have to make it a rigid body, also called a passive collider. To do this, we come here to the collider section and type in a new name for it. The collider will be assigned to the nucleus that is highlighted above. For objects to interact, they have to be part of the same solver. And click Passive Collider. In the outliner, a rigid body group was made. Now when we hit play, they close collide with the body. We can see that the render mesh also simulates the way that we would expect. Now let's say that we wanted the shirt on a different nucleus solver for whatever reason. We can easily create a new nucleus for either the shirt or the rigid body. If we're going to reassign the nucleus for the shirt, we simply select the master control. If we're doing it for the rigid body, we select the rigid body mesh. In this case, I'm going to change it for the shirt. So I select the shirt master control and make sure that I have a new nucleus highlighted in the nucleus list. Now I give it a unique name. Then I just click Reassign Nucleus. Once this is done, we can see that in our nuke group, we have a new nucleus. When we hit play, we see that the shirt no longer collides with the body. We can go back to what we had before by assigning the shirt to the original nucleus. When we hit play, now we see the shirt and the body colliding once again. The second nucleus that we had created, we can simply delete. If we click the refresh button in the nucleus list, we see that our list now gets updated. And that concludes our video on the Setup tab.